Hello everyone, this is the roundup of everything that's happened with Green Lantern in the month of May 2022. But before we get into it, I want to make sure you know that this is now the start of the third year of Mosaic Comics, and I have big plans for the projects that are going to define this channel in the coming year. If you haven't seen it already, I highly suggest you watch my video all about looking ahead to year 3, and follow me on Twitter at Mosaic Comics to keep up to date with everything going on with the channel. So to start things off this month, I was on episode 477 of the Lantern Cast, having a spoiler-filled conversation with Mark about the Disney Plus series Moon Knight, as well as the nature of fan expectation and the ways in which the MCU struggles against it. It was a really fun time, and even if you don't care about Moon Knight or the MCU, it's still a good conversation about the way fandom interacts with the media we consume. As far as Green Lantern goes, we are in full Dark Crisis mode. Dark Crisis number 0 came out on Free Comic Book Day, and was very much there to set the tone for the rest of the event. That image of all the heroes gathering for a vigil in honor of the fallen Justice League happens in this issue, as well as the heroes starting to notice odd behavior from the supervillain community. No big players are making any moves, but the small-time bad guys and Doomsday cults are all starting to freak out, like they know something's coming. We again see several shots of human Green Lanterns in their classic costumes with working rings, specifically Simon, Jessica, Sojourner, and Guy. And out of those 4, only Joe should be a Green Lantern right now. I've seen some scattered mentions that Dark Crisis takes place quote-unquote slightly in the future, which I guess is their way of having Batman be gone without having to stop publishing all the solo books he stars in, but I have a feeling that's going to be their way of hand-waving any continuity errors like all of these people being Green Lanterns again, even though it makes no sense at all with the current state of the Green Lantern series. The rest of the issue is an abridged retelling of the information we got in Justice League Incarnate number 4, which explained the current state of the multiverse and all the new retcons that make Dark Crisis work. I'd still recommend reading that issue because it's surprisingly good at giving you all the backstory you need going into this event. Then, in Justice League Road to Dark Crisis number 1, we get an 8-page team-up between Hal Jordan and Jackson Hyde, the new Aquaman. It's really not that great. They're fighting a very vague, generic threat, and Hal's dialogue on the first page makes it sound like he's trying to contact the Green Lantern Corps for backup when he's actually trying to call the Justice League. It's all very awkward, but it's kind of worth it for the 5th page because this is the exact moment Hal learns that his friends in the League are dead. And I really appreciate how his calm, cocky demeanor momentarily breaks when he's hit with the news. This one-shot in general is all about people reacting to the death of the Justice League. There's some interesting exchanges as nobody knows how to deal with all of this or what the next move should be. Some heroes put on a brave face and carry on, determined to pick up as much of the slack as possible, while others can't decide if they should even bother mourning their loss, since superheroes come back to life all the time. Except sometimes they don't. Even longtime villains don't seem to know what to do, and some even miss the heroes who always used to stop them. It's an interesting anthology, and I kind of wish it was longer so we could get more perspectives, because even if the Justice League isn't really dead, their absence still creates a very dangerous power vacuum that everyone's going to be rushing to either fill or exploit. We also got to see the Dark Crisis checklist of every book that's going to be part of this event, and I can honestly say that I'm pleasantly surprised by how streamlined Dark Crisis seems to be. You've got the main miniseries of Dark Crisis number 1 through 7, you've got exactly one tie-in miniseries in Dark Crisis Young Justice number 1 through 6, you've got exactly one ongoing series tying into the event for just 3 issues in The Flash number 783 to 785, and you've got a handful of one-shots, mostly focusing on the fallen members of the Justice League. Speaking as someone who loves following these big events, but hates having to buy and read so damn much just to do that, this looks pretty great to me. The vibe I get from this is that the main book is the important thing, and you can supplement it with as much or as little of the side stuff as you want. Which, honestly, has always been true about every event, but this one seems to be committing to the idea harder. I look at this list and I realize that my Dark Crisis experience will likely be the main book and the Green Lantern one-shot, and I feel good about that. I can always go back and read some of the other stuff if I hear it's good. I'll get to those Flash issues when I catch up on that series in trade, and I'm sure I'll get around to the Young Justice miniseries at some point, but yeah, I feel no pressure or commitment to read everything for this event, and it feels like that's intentional. And they could always add more books later, but for right now, I'm just ready to have a relaxing time as this carries us through the rest of the year. Speaking of that Green Lantern one-shot, this August we're getting Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League Green Lantern #1 by Philip Kennedy Johnson and Fernando Blanco, with a Hawkgirl backup story by Nadia Shamas and Jack Herbert. The issue stars Jon Stewart, Kyle Rayner, and Jason Todd of all people, and they're not directly confirming it, but this feels just like what happened to Barry Allen. He was sent to a quote-unquote perfect world by Pariah, made just for him, where a fake version of reality placates him and keeps him prisoner. I still think that's exactly what happened to the entire Justice League, and hopefully also Justice Incarnate, but we'll just have to see. And while this is only a one-shot, it won't be the only Green Lantern content coming out of Dark Crisis, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. Gabriel Hardman, the writer and co-artist of the original graphic novel series Green Lantern Earth 1, has confirmed on Twitter that the series is over, stating that while he'd love to finish the story with a third volume, multiple circumstances made it impossible. I love both volumes of Green Lantern Earth 1. It's probably one of my favorite Hal Jordan stories, and it's sad that we'll never get to see how that story was supposed to end. Though if there is a silver lining to all of this, it's the fact that Volume 2 does give us a status quo shift that serves as an ending, just not the one most people would want. And while I don't blame anyone for looking at this as the work just being unfinished, I also think there's something hopeful about where the story leaves off, like the adventure will continue even if we're not able to see it. Either way, thank you Gabriel Hardman and Karina Becto for your contribution to Green Lantern. Justice League vs. the Legion of Superheroes continues to trudge along at a frustratingly slow pace, and thanks to delays, we're only at issue 3. I know I've said it before, but this book reads like they had 2 or 3 issues worth of story and had to spread it out into 6. Maybe the second half will prove me wrong, but so far this miniseries has been tremendously disappointing, and it's made all the worse by the publication delays. It's taken 5 months to get 3 issues out, and I feel every day of it when I read another issue. And as I'm recording this, it was just announced that issue 4 has been pushed back from June 14th to June 28th, because of course it has. Jeffrey Thorne's been posting more blog entries about the making of his run, and it's fascinating to see him talk about the difference between what was originally planned versus what ended up making it to the finished product. Apparently, part of what DC liked about his original Jon Stewart pitch is that it wasn't going to be just a Green Lantern story, but rather a story about all of cosmic DC that organizes it into something bigger and more cohesive, with Green Lantern history as the connective tissue. I think it sounds like a great idea with loads of potential, but like we talked about the last time Jeffrey Thorne's blog came up, writing for a company like DC or Marvel is not as simple as just writing your story your way and getting it published. Everything was ready to go, but then new restrictions popped up out of nowhere, which means that suddenly there were all these characters and locations that couldn't be used in the story anymore, and entire franchises that couldn't even be referred to by name. The entire trip to the past that John and Lonar took was a last-minute change, an attempt to still deliver relevant information even though the original version of that part of the story couldn't happen anymore. We finally have a trailer for the animated Green Lantern movie announced at the most recent DC Fandom, Green Lantern Beware My Power, which comes out on July 26th. It stars Jon Stewart with co-stars Green Arrow, Hawkgirl, and Adam Strange, and according to IGN, will also incorporate elements of the Rann-Thanagar War. The trailer shows us more of the Justice League, as well as the rest of the Green Lantern Corps seemingly being wiped out by the Sinestro Corps, but we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. A lot of people are unhappy that they seem to be giving Hal Jordan's origin to John, but there's more of John's origin in there than you may think, since the alien in the crashed ship is a Guardian who says, "At last, I found you." If you remember the comics, John's origin story is that he was handpicked by the Guardians. Yes, it does borrow from Hal's origin with the dying alien in a crashed ship, but this isn't the first time they've given that aspect of Hal's origin to someone else, and I assume it's being done here for the same reason they gave it to Kyle Rayner in an episode of Superman the Animated Series. It's simple, straightforward, and doesn't take a lot of time, which is a big deal when you're making a full story in a single installment with a limited runtime, especially when you also have to fit in the Sinestro Corps, the Justice League, and apparently the Rann-Thanagar War. So unless we learn otherwise, I'm assuming they used aspects of Hal's origin because it's very economical and doesn't take a lot of time, while also retaining the most important aspect of John's origin, which I think is perfectly fine and not a big deal at all, and absolutely not something to get upset over. As fans, it can be easy to take every creative decision we don't like as a personal insult against us or our favorite characters. But if you've learned anything from my coverage of Jeffrey Thorne's blog over the last couple of months, it should be that none of these decisions are made maliciously. Nobody is trying to disrespect us or the things we love. It's pointless to get upset about one detail without understanding why it's even there, and it's silly to assume the worst of the people who made it, especially when it may not even be the original idea they had going into the project. Long story short, there's no reason to get mad, and we should judge the movie on its own merit when it comes out, not based on a general concept or a piece of trivia gleaned from the trailer. We're getting closer to the release of the movie DC League of Super Pets, and merchandise is starting to pop up, including a free comic book day issue titled DC League of Super Pets: The Great Mix-Up, featuring a story about Jessica Cruz and Chip. There's also a Chip plushie and some upcoming Happy Meal toys that, at the time of this recording, have only been announced for Australia, but it's still something to keep an eye out for. Though if you're more interested in watching out for Green Lantern comics, you're in luck, because DC's solicitations for books coming out in August is packed with Green Lantern appearances. In Dark Crisis number 3, Hal Jordan does the most Hal Jordan thing ever and launches a one-man all-out war on the villains who killed the entire Justice League. Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League Green Lantern number 1 tells the story of John Stewart in what's probably a fantasy world, with versions of Kyle Rayner and Jason Todd that probably don't really exist, but hey, it's an issue of a Green Lantern book and I know you've been craving that, so enjoy. Plus, it helps to reinforce the relevance of Green Lantern to the Dark Crisis event overall. Justice League vs. Legion of Superheroes finally ends with issue 6, and a cover that reminds me that one of the first things Bendis did when he came to DC was create 2 brand new characters in the Gold Lantern and Naomi, and they both have very similar aesthetics, and both of them have powers that manifest as golden energy, and both of them wear symbols that fall perfectly in line with all existing Lantern symbols, and Naomi's creative team have denied her connection to anything Lantern before. But her being paired with Kal El on the cover to the final issue of a story titled The Gold Lantern Saga makes me think that they're finally going to make a solid connection between the two. Unless this is just another case of a cover just being a cover. Deceased War of the Undead Gods number 1 is coming and I couldn't be more excited. One of my favorite Elseworld style stories in a long time is Deceased, something that I originally wrote off as just another zombie story that I was sure would do nothing but cash in on tired old tropes and just feel kinda cheap. But the buzz was so good that I decided to give it a try, and I loved it. It is so incredibly good, and now, after 2 main miniseries and a few spin-offs, the story of Deceased is finally coming to an end, and saving the Earth may cost the heroes the rest of the universe. And I know what you're thinking, that sounds like just another big cosmic DC event, right? Well, the difference is that since this takes place in its own world that doesn't have to continue on forever, the stakes are real this time. Every character, big and small, is in actual danger, and you honestly do not know who will walk away from this. It's an incredibly compelling piece of storytelling that changes the entire universe while focusing on very human arcs for a new generation of heroes coming up in the wake of the apocalypse, as well as the surviving members of the old guard who are forced to find new roles if they expect to carry on. It's been a hell of a ride, and I can't wait to see how it ends. Multiversity Teen Justice number 3 is going to have Aquagirl encounter Green Lantern Hal Ferris. And if anything about what I just said confuses you, you're gonna want to watch my very next video that releases after this one, all about the Lanterns of Earth 11. Batman Fortress is a story about Batman trying to deal with an alien invasion while Superman is away. And while the solicitations for issue 4 don't mention any Lantern stuff, the variant cover is this amazing image of Badge, so I have to assume he's in the story. Either way, this cover is incredible and I want it as a poster. Jurassic League number 4 gives us a Green Lantern dinosaur suplexing a Red Lantern dinosaur with a variant cover that shows them from a different angle. Everything about this book sounds incredibly fun. I think I'll wait for the trade and enjoy the whole thing over an afternoon. DC Mech number 2 will have Wonder Woman and the Green Lanterns arrive to help Flash and Batman, though the covers don't show off any Lantern mech designs. The Swamp Thing number 16 wraps up the current arc and features Hal Jordan on the cover. We found out a little while ago that a Green Lantern would be appearing in this story, and Hal just showed up in the most recent issue, which makes sense since it is his sector and everything, but it unfortunately means that there probably won't be an appearance by Medphil, which is a shame because Medphil is an alien plant person, and a Green Lantern appearance in a Swamp Thing story is the perfect opportunity to give him some attention. And lastly, Green Lantern Alliance, the second original graphic novel starring the character Tai Pham, has been resolicited for October. So that's the Green Lantern Roundup for May 2022. If you have something to say about any of these topics, or if there's anything you think I missed, let's keep the conversation going in the comments section down below. You can usually find me reacting to these developments in real time on Twitter at Mosaic Comics, and I'll be back doing another one of these videos a month from now, so subscribe and hit the bell to make sure you're notified when that video drops. Until then, thank you for taking the time to watch. My name is Dan, we'll talk again soon.